Well, we asked a variety of eminent church leaders from different persuasions their views on the challenges of change. They took a good hard look at the current situation and did their very best to advise on necessary changes that should be necessary in order to meet the future. 25 years later, on the 23rd of March 2020, COVID struck. All organisations and public gatherings were forced into lockdowns. However, crisis always creates opportunities. So there was a pause then, which we're hopefully going to come out of. But this pause was a good time when churches could look back, evaluate, and plan a new future. Changes. So in that 25 years then, did things that our eminent church leaders discuss, well, they put into place? Did many changes occur? Perhaps not, perhaps yes. Our church is not known for a knife going through butter. It's slow and lacks time to think and plan, which is not a bad thing. So then, after this period of reflection, what will our churches look like in the future? I wonder.
Working on this for a long time.
I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry. The traffic was unbelievable. I left early enough, but...
Well, have you got the papers? Have you?
I've got them right here.
I could have done that report in half an hour.
I could have done it in 10 minutes.
Come along, man, come along.
I've been up all night.
That's my down, idiot.
Oh, well, come along. Never mind about the papers. Everything's on the disc there.
Do you know, I worked so hard that I didn't even have time for breakfast. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Hello, German speaking.
Hello.
German here.
Hello?
I think it's me. Oh, no, I shouldn't be here. I'm sorry, I've got an important meeting with a client. I do apologise. I really... Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'll be back. I'll be back. Sorry, I seem to have picked up the wrong... Sorry. Yes? What do you mean he's changed it? I had it for 3:30. Well, so his plane's delayed. Look, what about lunch? What about me?
Hi, welcome to McDonald's drive-thru. May I take your order?
Double bacon cheeseburger, please.
I'm sorry, don't do that on the menu anymore, sir.
What do you mean you don't have it anymore? I've been having that for years.
I'm sorry, sir. Things change.
Change. Chris, I thought you told me those shares were rock solid. Oh, so yesterday I'm on top of the world and today it's all change, eh? Oh, thanks a lot.
to St. Etheldreda's. This ancient parish church is a monument to centuries of unchanging Christian witness. You will find here tranquility and peace, a refuge from the stresses of our modern world. Come with me as I give you a video-guided tour of our church, with the artistry of lighting and sound effects. If you'd like to take part in this ministry of tourism, why not place 5 £1 coins in the slot by the door? Then your personalized tour will begin.
Don't worry, St. Etheldreda's doesn't really have a ministry of tourism quite like that. But should it? Our modern world is changing at an amazing pace. For thousands of years, we couldn't move any faster than a horse.
In the 1830s, the horseless carriage kicked into life. Then in just over 100 short years, we put a man on the moon. This pace of change doesn't look like slowing down either. As soon as we buy a computer or household appliance, there is a new product on the market making the old one obsolete. Every week there is an advance in the speed of transport, communications and technology.
How much should the church embrace change? Should we take on every new technology and every new idea? Or should we say, stop the world, I want to get off?
Some Christians want the church to be an eternal city, immune from change, while other people want the church to be out front, pioneering the right kind of change in society. What we feel about change in the church reflects how we feel about our faith. Is faith meant to be a comfy cushion? Or a crutch to help us struggle through the difficulties of life? Is the church basically a defense against evil? Or is the church a valiant army of Christian soldiers called to fight against evil? Should faith always be neat and tidy and secure? Or are we sometimes called to pilgrimage and the adventurous life of faith? Is the church only a monument to the rich heritage of the past, or is it also a hopeful signpost to the future?
The problem is that the church really does have to do all these things. It's right for the church to preserve tradition and keep the faith, but it is also right for the church to be radical, even subversive, in its attempt to bring about the right kind of change.
Maybe the church is like a sailing ship. Those who like change love to see the sails fill and feel the wind in their face. But for the ship to have direction, it needs the stability of the invisible rudder. The winds of change need the rudder of tradition. Every church, small or large, Catholic, Methodist, Anglican, Baptist or Reformed, will have to face the challenge of change. Facing this challenge is vital not only for the health of each local church, but for the health of our shared Christian witness. Whether we want it to or not, change happens. A tree is either growing or it dies. This is the cruel fact of change.
Will we take charge of change, or will change take charge of us? In order to take charge, we will have to get into the driver's seat and, with God's guidance, make change a creative and fruitful process of the Spirit.
St. Jude's Church in Blackburn was a church faced with sudden and radical change. Facing change means taking risks. Things might go wrong and we might make mistakes. But remember the old saying, the person that never made a mistake never made anything. Without clear aims and goals, any changes we make will probably be a reaction to outside pressures. Reacting to a crisis rarely gets to the root of the problem. But with clear aims and goals, a church can define where it's going and initiate creative change. Then action is taken rather than reaction. Now then, Marion, how do you come to have such a lovely new church here at St Jude's?
The original church on this site was built in 1914 with seating for 700 people.
Right.
With the declining congregations over the years, there wasn't the revenue for the upkeep of the church, so it got in a terrible state of disrepair. Well, there was a meeting of the PCC, and we were asked if we wanted to make the church redundant. That's not what we wanted. We did want a new church.
Now then, Joyce, I believe you worshipped in a Roman Catholic church for a while. That must have been a big change for you. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, it was. It was a great change. It was one of those things that you did go for the occasional service. And then we started to have functions, social functions together. We have beetle drives. We have Christmas fairs, summer fairs. We have coach outings. It's brought the community closer together. People that you used to walk past it in the street because they went to the Roman Catholic Church. Now it's hello, good morning. They come to the coffee mornings here, and we enjoy it, yeah.
So I think the expectation that we shall sustain a large building in every community has got to be questioned in a generation when mobility is much easier. I think the question of the Anglicans doing it on their own, there's got at some point to be a breakthrough in the ecumenical thing, that we're not sustaining three churches of different traditions in one street.
Howell Jones is a Methodist local preacher. What are the biggest changes that the Methodist Church faces today?
This particular church is the centre of a large group of village churches, and it's the village churches that I think face the greatest changes. Through rural depopulation, people have moved away from villages.
How do you envisage the future in the Methodist Church?
I would anticipate a reduction in the number of ordained ministers, a reduction probably in the number of the smaller village chapels, and therefore a greater concentration on the larger churches, and with that a greater involvement of lay people together with the ordained ministers who are there.
Over the last 20 years, the Catholic Church has undergone many changes. Here with me today are two lifelong Catholics, Teresa and Peter, to discuss how those changes have affected their lives. Peter, what are the greatest changes you've seen in the Church?
Over these past 2 decades, the greatest changes, I suppose, are the reordering of the Church, the removal of the Latin Mass, and I suppose the turning of the priest round to face the people.
What changes do you fear for the future, Teresa?
I just hope that in the process of what changes might come, we don't lose members of our church, particularly young people who haven't had the faith very long.
Those close to the Lord can cope with change. Those who darken the church door now and again would be very insecure if they find it's not the same as it was before. They're not involved deeply in the ongoing life of the church. So the challenge in change is to make sure people are involved.
Come on, you can do it. Yeah, you can do it.
In modern church life, we have to grapple with change as never before. This means risk and potential disaster. Remember when Jesus called Peter to walk on the water? Jesus took a big risk on Peter, and Peter took a big risk by stepping out. If change is a problem for local churches, it is a great problem for our church leaders on the national and international level. American author and lecturer Dr. Tony Campolo questions whether the established mainline churches will be able to continue into the new century. As we are on the threshold of even more radical change, the old churches will seem ever more out of date, irrelevant, and useless. Can the church as we know it survive into the next millennium? Or will we have to adopt newer patterns of worship and witness?
Well, there are a lot of people who are saying that the church won't survive to the mid-21st century, and I think they're profoundly wrong, because I think God will never leave any society or culture without a witness to his name, and that's what the church is here for. We're here to witness to the love of God in Jesus Christ.
Sometimes people feel the church is irrelevant because it doesn't actually engage with where they are, it doesn't scratch them where they itch.
What we really need is a new brand of Christian that takes the Bible seriously, understands what the newspaper is saying, and applies both together.
Where there are very few Christian voices that are engaging with the issues that concern them. And so people who are struggling to make sense of relationships or unemployment, or aging, or poverty or whatever, are not hearing Christians engage with these in a very big public way. And they see the church as a kind of remote ghetto for religious people who like to do that kind of thing.
So much of what we preach about is ultimately irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the real world in which I live. I'm an employer, and I'm a colleague, and I'm a husband, and I'm a dad, and I go to church on Sunday and I listen to a sermon on a psalm, Psalm 100 and whatever it is, and the Hebrew words for worship therein and what they really mean and how they were translated into Greek, and it's all very wonderful and it's all very biblical and it's all wonderfully irrelevant. And so I'm still left asking, how can I keep my marriage together? How do I have a healthy relationship? How do I bring these kids up so that they grow into adulthood and independence? And no one's really helping me.
As one man said to me, it's like going to school. They sit you in rows, they give you a book, and they talk at you. And so using modern means, whether it's video, whether it's sound, lights and things, for some people, not all people, particularly young people, is switching into the culture that they are familiar with. And that can only be a good thing.
For the next 50 years, it seems to me that the church has got to rediscover its position in the community, in society, at the heart of society, to be really the ministers of change in their local community, to their neighbours, to the councils, to the governing bodies of schools and whatever other institutions that are set up, to be really salt and light, to be the accessible church so that the world can come to it and it can go to the world, to break out of our confines of the Victorian buildings that are around us and put ourselves back into the heart of society.
Someone once said that nothing is real unless it is local. The national and international church can only change as the local church changes.
In grappling with change, the first thing to do on the local level is to define our church's real goals and priorities. It will mean getting people together. This can be done by organising a special meeting about change or through existing church councils. There will be plenty of different ideas about the church's first priority. What is the most important activity you share together? Once you've agreed on the priorities, discuss how much time and energy is actually spent elsewhere.
For the Christian, change should mean growth. For individuals and church families, growth means spiritual growth. When you think about it, our main priority as Christians is to change. Cardinal Newman said, "Change is the only evidence of life."
This spiritual growth is what the church is all about. As you meet together, you'll need to discuss practical ways for your church to encourage spiritual growth. Spiritual growth will come in as many different forms as there are different Christian groups. What is right for your group will not necessarily be right for others, but certain things will be the same for everyone. First, spiritual growth is the aim and goal for all Christians. Real growth can only come through first listening to God, then listening to each other. Think how each new challenge can be a stepping stone to a new opportunity. Don't be afraid of something new. A new experience is a new world. Don't be afraid of a challenge of faith. Rejoice in the present and look to the future with hope, remembering that time is in God's hands. As we approach a new millennium of Christ's victory, the Church has new opportunities for growth as never before. With new technologies, we can communicate the gospel quickly and powerfully. If we can release old patterns of ministry, new patterns will spring up. If we can get our priorities right, we will move forward into growth.
And maybe we've got to look at our structures, we've got to look at our presentation, but at the same time, prayerfully retaining what is good and wholesome from the past.
We've lived through a time which has insisted very much on me, mine, and now. And all the churches are about us and tomorrow and the past.
We have to experiment with worship. We have to look at ways in which we incorporate young people more and more in their own worship. Look at the talents that they are bringing to the church and saying, how can we use these to transmit the age-old message?
Christianity is a radical message, and in that sense we need to rediscover our radical roots.
So the difference between a church that understands change and works hard at it, and a church that tries to ignore it, is the difference between a church that will grow and thrive and one that will become obsolete.
The challenges before us might seem like a threat. We may feel the changes swirling around will plunge us into darkness and chaos. Nevertheless, the story of Genesis shows that God the Creator works most powerfully when He's bringing order out of chaos. Each new threat of change is also an opportunity to advance. Each new challenge of change is also the chance for growth.